not knowing is freedom. So there actually is nothing to grab onto, no idea to hold as truth, no belief, no path, no one right way, there is no truth. Everything is just completely unknowable. And then from there, there's actually a deep, deep beauty that can be appreciated in the human experience and all of its like nuances and the stories and the healing process and the trauma that's in the body and healing the inner child. Like all of that seems so beautiful and miraculous, and yet it is still just a story. We don't know anything. We don't know what's going on. There is no one here and no one to say that this is the right path and this is the way to liberation. And it's just a complete and utter explosive chaotic mystery. And then in that, it's like, why not share what I've been through and what I feel worked for this system? There's truth in the relative, there's truth within the story. Even though there's a knowing that there was never a someone who had a story, an identity, and a timeline. It was all a dream. It really was. It was an illusion. There was an illusory sense of me in the body that felt very real and created this relationship to everything, owning of everything, claiming of everything. And there was a center point. It seemed like, it felt like. When you see that there is no one here and there's nothing but unknowing, there's nothing that can be definitively said. And to now be at this point where it was already always just this. And to say to a person that feels as if they are a somebody that, in a way, there are certain energetic shifts and openings and a relaxation of the body that can aid in the receptivity and openness to hearing this radical non-dual message that is uncompromising, that is directly pointing to the reality that there is no one there and there is no one to get to, and the very seeking energy of me is the one that evades the truth. That very movement that seeking energy makes resists what is and denies what is, which is all there has ever been and all there will ever be. It's just this, and it's always been just this. So it's a tricky thing to teach and to, suggest that there is a way, because the trap is so apparent. Like there is a belief that healing the inner child, or at least bringing energetically the trauma to a point where, it releases this like death grip. Because what's happening on the human level is that this sense of me is there to protect itself. And so, the thoughts that are produced are more on the negative side because it wants to problem solve and keep itself safe. And so when that's identified with, it can feel as if I'm really negative, or I have a problem, I'm depressed, and it can lead into this spiral if it's when it's identified with, which is seemingly inevitable, for a certain point of time. And then what happens is this survival mechanism, this protection mechanism is meant for you not to feel the feeling that is producing these fearful thoughts or these negative thoughts. And it could be very attacking thoughts, like I'm not good enough, thoughts of unworthiness and feelings of insecurity and things like that. It can attack the self. It can attack itself. Rather than feeling the feeling. It wants to distract and create a story and do anything to avoid feeling the feeling. Unless that is taught to someone, it's very natural to want to be out of the body and to resist the feeling and to repress or suppress and deny the feeling. So in a way, I do think that it's essential to learn that whole mechanism and to see that it's there to protect you, but it's not serving you. And the way to liberation, the way from freedom from stuck emotions and contractions in the body, is to go through it. And again, there is kind of a whole process in that as well, to be gentle, to intuitively sense when it's too much, or and to have this really curious mindset, like, what is this feeling exactly? And knowing that it's not you, knowing that it's just a sensation. Yeah, it can feel really threatening in the beginning and intense and really difficult to feel because we're just not accustomed to doing that. So like with anything, it takes time and practice to get the hang of it. But when we don't know this, then the energy of the me is constantly seeking elsewhere to be satisfied and to avoid pain. It wants pleasure and it wants to avoid pain. That is the movement. That's the movement that is veiling what is right now. And this whole explanation is getting to the very, 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 very root of it. Because once that sense of me is established, then, we're conditioned further and further and further with our parents and friends and society and media and our whole environment. And then we get stuck in stories and narratives. Like, I have to do this in order to feel value. I want to get a boyfriend so I feel whole and loved and okay. I want to travel so I have more experiences, so I feel validated and feel whole and like I'm doing something with my life and I feel enough. So all of these stories are just an expression of this very fundamental, rudimentary, basic foundation of this me energy that most likely started when we were like 1 or 2 or 3. And again, this is all just a story, but if we don't recondition ourselves in a way and learn why it's essential to actually come back into the body, why it's unlikely that we'll do that, because the very mechanism of this me energy and the mind is to keep you quote unquote safe and to avoid the feeling because it interprets it as danger. So if we can understand this mechanism and retrain our body and mind to go toward the feeling, then over time, it's more possible that this seeking energy will weaken. Because what is there to avoid when you're going toward the uncomfortable feeling? With curiosity, like what is there to avoid, really? It seems very threatening, but really it's an elusive threat. It's not a true, real threat. And it can feel devastating at times, but the more we can practice this with gentleness and knowing when it's enough, but we do this and retrain the body and mind over and over, then we don't really have much to avoid. And in a sense, it becomes more and more of a pleasure to just be in the body. Because the more that this is practiced, I know that this is just a story, but the more that this is practiced, then energetically there are releases and less and less negative thoughts are produced, less and less thoughts that attack itself are produced. And this might take a while, because to unravel these knots within us, it can seem like layers and layers of compact energy, because it took a whole lifetime to actually create those tensions. So we're learning how to decondition ourselves, unlearn, and in a way relearn that we're not unworthy. We are worthy. We're not lacking. We are enough. We're not unlovable. We are totally and completely lovable. And again, that's a narrative, but it takes that other polarity of the narrative to kind of loosen and massage and relax the body and mind, and to, dissolve these energies. So again, it's tricky because you've just replaced the negative narrative with a positive narrative, and they're both not true, because nothing is true. But what it does is allows your whole body and mind to relax, to open, to feel love, to know that you are love, that there's nothing but unconditional love. Unconditional love meaning there's an allowance for everything, for hatred, for anger, for resentment, for joy and bliss and ecstasy, for simplicity, for anything, everything. So I feel like learning the mechanism of the me energy, the protection mechanisms, and seeing that retraining our body and mind to go toward that which we are afraid of, which is the actual feeling and the emotion, instead of avoiding it and getting the boyfriend, the job, more money, more spiritual knowledge, more books read, more intelligence, whatever it might be, instead of avoiding the feeling and going toward the external to try and fill a void, which can never be filled, then we can stop that mechanism, that hamster wheel that will really get you nowhere, that will keep you on the hamster wheel.